Thank you all for taking time out of your busy day to come in hear this total data nerdy speech. I promise it's not going to be data nerd. Walk through the information that we have at the Census Bureau. So as you just heard, I've been at Census for a long time. We do a lot of programs at the Census Bureau. I work on the side of the census that does all of our business surveys. So today we're going to talk about how businesses use Census Bureau and, in a broader term, commerce data for business insights. How they use our information to drive decisions about where they're going to open locations, whether they're going to expand, what products and services they're going to provide in their business, what opportunities exist that they may not be aware of. Businesses that currently don't export might then discover, ooh, wow, I didn't realize that other businesses like me export. Maybe I ought to be looking at that. So we're going to be talking about that today. In the interests of time, and I will warn you ahead of time, I have been known to go crazy and go over, so I have policed myself. We're going to do it totally PowerPoint. I'm not going to go live, so I'm going to apologize right now for anybody who is expecting a live demo, but I really would encourage you all to check out this data tool when you get back to your office. When you signed in, for those of you who are here in the room, when you signed in, there was a little business card, sort of a little card there on the table that had the URL for the data tool I'm going to show you today. Please, please, please check it out. Let folks know that you work with about it. This is a great resource for you to use. So to kind of get us started, I want to just sort of do a little level setting here. If you were to ask 10 people, what is the U.S. Census Bureau? 8.2 of them, we are a statistical agency, so we're pretty nerdy, would tell you that we are the organization, they don't even know that we're a federal agency, that counts the U.S. population every 10 years. And those 8.2% of the people, 80% of the people, think that that's all we do. That is not all we do. In addition to the population census every 10 years, we also conduct an annual program called the American Community Survey. For those of you who are familiar with the old decennial census form, the long form, the ACS essentially replaces that old long form data, but is now available every single year instead of just every 10 years. So it provides an amazing wealth of demographic, socioeconomic, and housing data that businesses can use in making their business decisions. In addition, though, we conduct 42 business surveys. The economic census, as you see on the slide, is our largest economic program we conduct at the Census Bureau. It is a complete, full census of all 8 million employer businesses in the United States. It is going on right now. 2017 is our economic census year, or was our census year. We began collecting data on May 1st. So businesses in local communities have received this form, and I'm going to use the term form in quotes. In the next presentation that we're going to be doing, we're going to be talking about the changes for the economic census. The big one is there is no form. We are doing 100% electronic collection for the 2017 economic census. So that form's in the field right now. That's done every 5 years on the years ending with 2 and 7. In addition, we also do a census of governments. This is public sector. And what I always like to tell people is there are a lot of businesses that masquerade as a business but are really treated by us as a government. For example, in this area, our metro system is not a train company, not a transportation company. They are a government. They have governmental character. They have the ability to do the kind of things that governments can do. So Metro is actually published as a government in our public sector data. So we have this amazing wealth of quality data that presents this amazing portrait of America's people, places, and economy. I love to sort of say that. And if you are a data nerd, if you are someone who understands our programs, who really gets statistics, a term like median household income doesn't send you screaming into the night, and number 3, has the time to invest into learning our tools, using our data can be really great. On the slide, we have a list of a couple of the key data tools we have at the Census Bureau. There's over 80 data tools currently on census.gov. This is just a tiny, small subset of them. The ones at the top of the list are sort of the easier to use ones. The ones at the bottom of the list are the more detailed ones. From my 30 years at Census, I know, I've learned that we do a really good job of getting our data out to power users. These people whose jobs completely and totally depend on accessing our data. And tools like American FactFinder, that you'll see in just a second, do a great job of getting that data to a user who wants to be able to download data for every single business and every single county in Maryland. They want all 55,000 records or so. They want to manipulate that data. They want to mash it up with other data. They know how to do that. They really don't need our help. They just need us to facilitate their download. On the opposite end of the extreme, we have the really, really, really simple user. The person who calls into the census or contacts us to say, I want to know what the population of Crofton, Maryland is. I want one number. Tools like QuickFacts, little screenshot over there in the upper right-hand corner of the slide, is a great tool. It is our most popular tool on Census.gov. It allows you to go in and say, I want to look at some key demographic and business data, a little bit of business data, for a specific geography. The screenshot I have up there, I know it's very hard to read. The PowerPoint file is going to be made available. Shows data for Maryland, for Anne Arundel County, and for the town of Crofton, Maryland, where I live. You can go in and select those geographies and very, very simply access that data. It's an amazing tool if what you need is just a couple of key statistics. Tools like My Congressional District and My Tribal Area are also really easy to use. They are designed for an audience that cares about that specific type of geography. Congressional staffers love MyCD, the My Congressional District, because it lets them get some selected key data about the size of the population, the demographics, and the businesses in their congressional district. Some district boundaries are really easy for us to tabulate data for. Other ones are a mess. Where I live in Crofton, Maryland, Crofton is divided into 3 different congressional districts. I want to find the person who actually designed those, drew those lines, and have an animated conversation with that person, because I don't get it at all, why they split Crofton into 3 pieces. But the data are really, really easy to use using that tool. Where I think we've had the gap, well, let me back up. So this is American FactFinder. American FactFinder is one of our most powerful database applications, allows you to go in and select a particular program, to be able to look at the particular data for that program, but you sort of have to know where you're going. You have to know something about our data programs. What is the survey that I want to go to that's going to have the data that I'm interested in? You sort of have to know that. Bottom left-hand corner of the slide is a tiny, tiny screenshot of our application programming interface discovery tool. We have about 190 data sets in our API right now. It is a fabulous resource for people who download huge bulk amounts of data. So if any of you work with people who are out there every single year downloading the 5-year ACS estimates for their state, for their county, for their industry, for their location, and every single year are having to download that data one at a time, please tell them that we have this resource available. They can connect dynamically to our API and pull the data down into their tool on the fly. The Census Business Builder tool that hopefully you'll play with later, actually all the data in that tool comes down dynamically. The footprint of CBB is tiny because none of the data is resident in the application. That takes me out of the business of having to archive all of that data. So think about users out there that would want to pull data down and update it every single year when the latest data come out. They don't want to have to store that data themselves. That means they're now in the business of archiving our data. Let them connect in dynamically. So we've done a great job, and in my 30 years I feel comfortable saying that, of meeting the needs of sort of that really entry-level user and the real power user. But where we've had challenges, and we're working toward that today, is to meet the needs of sort of those more mid-level users, the people who need more than what the entry-level user needs, but don't have the skill and the knowledge and the expertise that the power user has to access that data. And that's what we're going to sort of focus on today with a walkthrough of the 2 editions of Census Business Builder. CBB, as we like to call it, was born in September of 2015, so we're just about ready to have our third anniversary. There are two editions of Census Business Builder. The top one here is our Small Business Edition. The bottom one on the left is the Regional Analyst Edition. The Small Business Edition, as the name implies, was designed specifically to help entrepreneurs and small business owners get the key data that they need for their business, for their research. When you look at the small business failure rate today in the US, over 90% of all businesses that are born in 1 year die within that first year. It's alarming. If I do nothing but by the time I retire from the census, which I'm actually eligible in October, kind of thinking about Andy 2.0, we'll see. If we can reduce that failure rate by helping those businesses make smart decisions, then we have really done a good job as an agency. The biggest reason why those small businesses fail is they don't do their homework. They work hard. Many times it's not an issue of funding, but quite simply they don't do their research to say, is opening a daycare center in this town at this time a good idea? For the most part, they don't do that research because they don't know where to go to get the information to do that research. So this tool was specifically designed for them. As you'll see in just a minute, the use of Census Business Builder Small Business Edition has grown quite a bit to include medium-sized and even some larger corporations. What we've sort of learned is that while the tool was designed just for little guys, even the big guys have discovered that, ooh, this is really cool. I really like this. This makes it a lot easier for me to get to those basic data that I need. The Regional Analyst Edition was released about a year after the small business was first issued. And what I will mention too is we've been updating these applications every 3 to 6 months. Quite literally, I'm waiting for my phone to buzz to say version 2.0 is going live today. I'm hoping, I just felt it buzz, but I promise I'm not going to take it out. We update the application to include the most recent data and to add more features. I'll mention one of those features that we just added today in the presentation. The Regional Analyst Edition was designed specifically for chambers of commerce and other planning authorities. Instead of being interested in just one type of business, like you can do in the Small Business Edition, the Regional Analyst Edition lets you look at all the businesses that are in an area, not just one at a time. It's sort of a 30,000-foot view of the local economy, but more importantly, it lets these users build their own region. Census has demographic, business, and business data available at a wide list of geographic areas. National, state, county, metro, city, zip code, and even census tract level data are all available in Census Business Builder. And a lot of chambers of commerce represent just a single county. But other chambers and other regional planning groups represent a larger group of geographies, 10 cities, 5 counties, something like that. They have the raw data from us, they can get that data from us, but accessing that data and aggregating it to cover their coverage area is hard. That's what this tool was designed specifically to do. Okay, so that's sort of a very high-level overview of the two editions. On the right-hand side are a couple of guiding principles that we followed when we built this tool. First and foremost, it had to be easy to use and very customer-focused. We have received over 1,000 emails. Lucky me, to my inbox, have received over 1,000 pieces of feedback since the application first went live. If you were to look at the application in today's release versus 6 months ago, you'd be amazed how much it keeps changing because of customers. So when you go back and start playing with Census Business Builder, if you see something that kind of annoys you, or you say, ooh, that's really cool, but I wish it included X, there's a send feedback link in the upper right-hand corner of the application you can click on. Please do that. It comes to my mailbox. The tool includes data not only from the Census Bureau, but from other sources. It was always designed from that way because to many data users, they quite frankly don't care where the data comes from. We had regional planners that said, you're killing me that you guys include every sector of the US economy except for one, agriculture. USDA has data through the National Agricultural Statistics Service for agriculture. But I want to include ag, farms, in my profile of my region. Can you include that? So we do. We actually have USDA data now in Census Business Builder that allows someone to get a comprehensive portrait of their economy. We even have some third-party data. This was sort of blasphemy to folks at the Census Bureau. It's amazing that I'm actually still working. We are including third-party data from Esri. Esri actually is the developer of this application. Every year they compile their own consumer expenditures data based upon credit card receipts. We have about 80 of their variables in this tool. We've bought their data, we put it in here, and it's all available completely for free. If I was interested in opening a restaurant, and my restaurant was going to serve breakfast and lunch, I'm going to shut down for dinner time. Looking at how much people spend on breakfast and lunch by geography would be really interesting, right? It would be good to know that. Ooh, look at this area over here. A lot of people spend a lot of money on lunch. Why? That might be a good place to put my business. That data is available in the tool. We also leverage a lot of investments that we have at the Census Bureau. I already mentioned Esri is the developer. We also are the first Census Bureau tool that's fully consuming our data API, the application programming interface. And this is also the first publicly facing free tool that's available on census.gov that's cloud hosted. We're actually on Amazon Web Services, AWS West. We put it on the cloud for one reason and one reason alone: it's fast. No one has any patience to watch a map build for 30 seconds, so we said, we're not keeping hosting it ourselves. We're going to put it on the cloud. It'll be really speedy. So with that, I want to now talk about 3 user stories. One of the nicest compliments that I get from people periodically is, Andy, I love your stories. You've got 1,000 different stories of users that I've talked to over the years that are using Census Bureau, using Commerce Department data to do important things for their organization, for their company, or for their community. So I want to tell 3 real-life user stories, and I will tell you ahead of time, in the spirit of openness and honesty, that is really not Janet. That's just a stock photo. I can't put her real photo there. That's another bureau kind of thing, probably a commerce thing. So when you see these pictures, no, that is not Janet. But I will tell you there really is a real Janet. Janet owns a bar in downtown Annapolis. I'm a sailor. After every Wednesday and Thursday night races, us sailor nerds flock to her bar and a few other ones. It's the best bar in downtown Annapolis. I can't tell you the name, but anyway, go check it out. Has this really successful business. But she's been thinking a lot, or had been thinking a lot, about expanding to other markets. Friends of hers who live in Northern Virginia said, oh, I love your place, but it's such a pain for me to get from Fairfax over to Annapolis to go to your bar. Can you please open a location in Fairfax? Now, she was born and raised in Anne Arundel County. She lives in the city of Annapolis, walking distance, I think she rides her bike actually, to her bar. But she doesn't really know very much about the city of Alexandria, about Fairfax County. So she came to me and said, Andy, do you have something that a tool or some data that I could use to help me decide whether or not this is a good idea to open my bar there? Do you have some information about the demographics of the areas that I'm considering? I know what kind of people currently come to my bar. I like that group. I would like to see if I can get an area, open a bar in another area that has that same kind of demographic characteristics. Can you help me find that? I also know that I'm going to have some competition. Can you give me some data on how many other bars are already there that are meeting that market that would be my potential competition? But I also know that bars often operate within a restaurant. A restaurant has a bar. Okay? That bar inside that restaurant is not separately published by the Census Bureau as a bar. It is a restaurant because the entire business makes more of its money on restaurants. So she said, can you give me some information about how to get to data on how many bars are already there? Is the market saturated? When I'm considering opening a business there, I want to know something about sort of what is the going rate for businesses that are there. How much do businesses there pay their employees? What's the average annual payroll per employee? Is opening a bar in Alexandria going to be cheaper or more expensive than Fairfax City? Okay, does this make sense? If I pay my employees a lot, Am I also going to see a lot of revenue that they're going to generate? Are the revenue per employee, is it going to be higher in those areas where I have to pay them more? And then finally, do you have any data on potential suppliers? I right now buy all my goods from my restaurant, or my bar in Annapolis, from suppliers in Anne Arundel County. They're going to charge me a fortune to ship that stuff over to Alexandria or to Fairfax County. Can I find local suppliers? And the short answer, of course, I wouldn't be here telling you this, is yes. Census Business Builder includes data on every one of the topics that we just talked about. So first, she went in and she selected from the menu on Census Business Builder. She went to food services and chose bars as her industry. I also pointed out to her that we have data on restaurants. That's the bottom left-hand corner little circle there. So after she does her research about bars, she might want to look at restaurants as well. She then went over to the menu on the right-hand side and said, I'm interested in starting off at Fairfax County. Let's kind of start big and narrow my research down. So she chose that. And that then brought her into the map in Census Business Builder, where she went in and researched the business's data on the number of bars, the revenue per those employees, the population per business. How many people in this area does each bar serve? If you were considering opening a business where you had 500 people per business versus another community that had 5,000 people per business, which would be the better place to open my business? The second one, right? The market is being less well served. It's less saturated. She also said, you know, are bars doing well in this area? Are they hiring more people, or are they losing people like crazy? I know I have a certain churn in my own business of staff that come on and then quit after a period of time. What's that churn? What's the hires and separations for bars in Fairfax County? Give me that kind of information. That's included in Census Business Builder as well. And then she said, okay, let's look at the customers' data. Let's look at things like median household income. I know the customers that come to my bar right now are of sort of a moderate level income. They're not the hoity-toity crowd in downtown Annapolis. They go to a different place. They're sort of that middle income kind of area. I like that crowd. Do you have information that lets me find where are all the people that earn sort of a middle level income? And what does that mean? I know most of my clients that come to my current bar right now are college educated. So do you have educational attainment data? The answer is yes, that's in the tool. They are all employed. Do you have that data? And also I want to look at how much do they spend. And as she was navigating the tool, she went through and drilled from county, like we have in the map on the left-hand side, down to individual cities, zip codes, and even census tracts to find those specific communities that met her criteria, that were good places for her to either locate her business or at least to market her business to those people that live in that area. So when you think about the customers, they might live right by your business, but they might then actually live a farther distance away. So she used this tool to do all that. And when she was finally done, she generated a report. This is actually the link to the report that she generated, that she then presented to her small business lender to show them, look, I did my homework. I know that opening this business in this area at this time is a good idea. I used Commerce Department data to provide business insights that are guiding my decision of where to open that business. Okay? To me, this is a great story. To tell you the end of her story. She did open second location. It's doing really well. I'm actually scheduled to go there next week on Wednesday. She's got like a special thing on Wednesday for sailors that are trying to get them to sail in Alexandria area on the Potomac. I think it's horrible, but whatever. So she used our data, she used our resources to guide her investment decisions. Okay? It's a good story. Good. Okay, so let's go to story number 2. John. John is the field manager for a company that manufactures trucks that plumbers and electricians and other building trade contractors use in their business. If you think about the kinds of supplies that a plumber has to cart around with them all the time when they come to fix a leaky pipe in your house, it's ridiculous. If you open the back doors of one of their trucks, it's like bin central in there. It's like 30 million little tiny bins with this size pipe, with this kind of degree elbow, and it's just ridiculous. So they buy their vehicles from a company like John's that have these bins already set up. Their truck is already designed to carry a water heater, et cetera, et cetera. He coordinates the network of all of their repair facilities across the United States. This is sort of a medium-sized company, doing pretty well, but still not a big, gigantic guy. And they had done a customer satisfaction survey of their repair facilities. They were thrilled to see that they got really good results, good reviews for most of their facilities. But there were a couple of facilities, an alarmingly large number of facilities, according to him, that they got horrible, horrible reviews. And most of the reviews, the comments that they got from their customers, had nothing to do with the quality of the service that was being provided. They loved the service. They said their vehicle was fixed correctly. It didn't have to be brought back. It was all about how long they had to have their truck there at the repair facility. If you are a plumber and your truck is stuck in the shop for 4 hours, that's a bummer, okay? But if you are a plumber and your truck is stuck in the shop for a week, you are dead. Your business is not doing anything. You have no ability to get to your customers. And they got a lot of reviews from people saying, my truck was in your shop for 4 or 5 days. I'm not bringing it back here again. And they said, oh, man, what can we do? I actually had met him at a conference that I had attended. He came up to our booth and we were talking, and he said, we don't know what to do right now. We're sort of mulling it. Do you have any information that could help me understand why we're getting these kind of reviews? One of the things they thought about was that when they first designed their repair networks, what the service area was going to be for each of their facilities, they understood at that time how many plumbers, how many electricians, how many other building trade contractors were in those areas, but they suspected that some of those areas had grown well beyond what they originally were expecting in terms of traffic, and those were the areas that they thought might be the ones that were getting the bad reviews, because they were trying to send, the facility just couldn't keep up with the traffic. The market had grown to the point that they just couldn't do it. So he said, do you have any data that provides information on the number of plumbers and electricians and building trade contractors, and how has that number changed since their repair network was first created? He knew that plumbers, electricians, and building trade contractors tend to go where the houses are being built or where houses are being renovated. They follow the housing stock, if you will. So how is the housing stock in our particular area changing? And could that be explaining why these facilities are not doing so great? He also knew that typically most of their customers drive 50 miles or less to the location, but he wanted to know how has that sort of radius changed. And he wanted to know, most importantly, do the locations of each of my existing facilities align with the data that you guys have? So, of course, I said, yeah, Census Business Builder, Small Business Edition. And he said, I'm not a small business, I'm a big company. And I said, I understand, ignore the small part, just pretend it's called Business Edition, not Small Business Edition, and go to this tool and check it out. So he went in to Census Business Builder and pulled up a nationwide map of the number of plumbers in the upper left-hand corner and the number of electricians, other kinds of building trade contractors, and went in and looked at how is that concentration, how many of them exist today, and how is that number changed over time. In talking with him, I also said, you know what? There are a lot of plumbers and electricians that work for a plumbing company, a company that has multiple employees, but there's a lot of independent contractors. How many of your customers are independent contractors? How many of them are small guys that only have one truck? It's them. And he said, ooh, you're right, we probably have some of those. So in the bottom right-hand corner, I showed him the non-employer data we have in Census Business Builder. These are independent contractors, sole proprietors. 3/4 of all businesses in the United States are non-employers. It's a huge number of little tiny businesses. Typically, they do not make a big share of the economy, but in some industries, like construction, they are huge. 10 times as many non-employers in construction as there are in the employer businesses. So it's a big market, so he really had to understand it. So he used the business data that we have to compare those employer and non-employer businesses. He looked at each of the building trade contractor types to see, is an area booming in plumbers, but not so much in electricians. The setup of the trucks that they sell to a plumber is different than the setup that they sell to an electrician. An electrician has to have these things that you hold big spools of wire. You don't have those on a plumber's truck. He also used some brand new tools we had just added in December to the reference layers tool. So first, he was able to overlay a reference map of all of their existing repair facilities and set his map on top of our data to see how well do his repair facilities align with the data that we actually have in the tool. He, of course, his company, of course, also maintains their own data about their customers. So he used a feature that we added last year that allows them to upload their own data into our application. They could load up their statistics and compare their data to our data. So they could say, okay, I have 57 plumbers in this county that I serve or in this city that I serve, and you guys are telling me that there's 627? Oh, wow, okay, this is a big opportunity. I got an underserved market. I don't have a lot of those plumbers that are there. Other markets, they then found that their data matched up pretty well with our numbers. They had a really good penetration. So they used that. Census Business Builder also has the ability to upload other data that's not in Census Business Builder, not just the customer's own data, but other data. So he actually uploaded our own Census Bureau building permits data to put in here to say, how are the permits in these communities changing over time? Am I seeing a real spike in the number of new residential building permits that might indicate, ooh, okay, this area is really growing? I ought to make sure I have some excess capacity because I suspect that I'm going to get more customers coming to those areas because now the houses are booming, okay? In the end, he ended up reconfiguring their repair network, and they're actually still doing it today. They have closed a couple of underperforming locations. They added a bunch of new locations in areas that were really booming. What they discovered was a lot of those poorly performing repair facilities were just so taxed, they couldn't keep up. So when they added another location, the customers could now drive only 20 miles to that location rather than driving 50 miles to that location. They've just done, I think it was just done last month, another customer satisfaction survey. They got across the board fabulous reviews because they listened to their customers. They used our resources to help them make that decision that yes, opening some more, moving some, and closing some was a good idea, okay? So I love this story. It's sort of a medium-sized company business story. The last story I want to share, and I want to make sure I'm doing okay on time here, it looks like I'm doing okay, is Karen. Again, this is not Karen. She is the president of the Adirondack Regional Chamber of Commerce. I grew up in New York City area. I went to Syracuse University in Syracuse, New York. The Adirondacks, if any of you want to see real leaves change in the fall, you've got to go to the Adirondacks and see. It is absolutely one of the most beautiful places, certainly in New York State, in my opinion. Not so humble opinion, but it's a beautiful place. And I had met her at a New York State Chamber of Commerce conference. She's the president of this regional chamber, and her chamber does really well. It's a smaller chamber of commerce. There's not a huge amount of people and businesses that live in that part of New York State, but she's consistently gotten great awards, both nationally and locally, for the services that her chamber provides to people and businesses in her areas, okay? But like all good managers, she wanted more. She wanted to do even more. She wanted to see her chamber grow beyond what it was. Now, on paper, her chamber covered 4 counties in that sort of northeastern corner of New York State. But really, in practice, they only covered 2 and little pieces of the other 2 counties. Just the northern part of Washington County and the southern part of Essex County were covered in her chamber. The rest of the county, of those 2 counties, were in practice not in scope of her chamber. She never sent any staff to those parts of those 2 counties to help promote business growth there. And she was always sort of concerned, am I missing a piece of my market? Should I really expand my chamber and make the investment in people and in time and resources to get more of my staff to visit those other areas of the county, of those 2 counties? Could I compare the existing membership of my chamber to the number of businesses by industry that are available, that are actually present there in those 4 counties to see, am I missing something, okay? Are there certain types of businesses that I'm not counting right now just because of the nature of how I drew my own boundaries? She also was really concerned that while her chamber had primarily focused on larger employer businesses, they really had sort of not thought very much about independent contractors. They were saying, yeah, I know that there are some of these people that live in this area of New York State. I know that some of them are doing quite well for themselves. They are IT consultants or other kinds of consultants that are working for firms based in New York City. They work out of their house 4 or 5 days out of the week. Once a month or whatever, or twice a month, they drive down to New York, they go to their office, or they fly to California to the company that they work for. But we don't really sort of think of them. That's not a core part of my chamber. So should I really kind of consider these non-employers, these independent contractors? So she said, Andy, can you help me? Does the Commerce Department, does Census have tools that could help me understand my larger market? And of course, for the 3rd time, of course, I had to say, yes, of course we do. The Regional Analyst edition of Census Business Builder is a tool that you might be interested in using. So we started off with the Regional Analyst edition, selected the primary county, where her chamber's based, which is in Warren County, New York. She then went in to Census Business Builder, and she built a region of those 4 counties in the upper left-hand corner on the map. You can see that. That's the 4-county region that she selected to say, this is the total of what I think my chamber currently could, what we say it covers, but what it really doesn't cover in practice. And she built a report of that 4-county area. In that 4-county area, there's 9,700 employer businesses, with the largest sector being retail trade. Now, in that area of New York State, it's probably somewhat understandable. A lot of people have vacation homes there. They vacation there, and they have to go shopping, so retail is a big sector. 21,000 employees in that section of New York State, those 4 counties, work in the retail trade sector. There are 27,096 non-employer businesses in that 4-county area. And, alarming to her, the largest sector of those non-employer businesses is professional, scientific, and technical services. These are these high-end contractors, consultants. Think about some of the people that live, that maybe are neighbors of yours in Northern Virginia, that are defense contractors or work as independent consultants for companies. There's a lot of them in Northern Virginia. There are a lot of them there, 4,323. They had no idea that they even existed. These was completely untapped market in her chamber. And she was thinking about what the heck got those people to move there, to start their business and to run their business there. I said, well, they probably already lived there, but they probably went to MIT or some really good university, and they loved that area of New York so much that they moved back after graduation. But now they are working for a company that's maybe 1,000 or even 5,000 miles away, because you guys did one thing in that area of New York that really helped. You made sure that you had high-speed internet access throughout those 4-county areas. New York State, that part of New York, as rural as it is, it's amazing how good the internet access is. Very few people up there actually have to have a satellite dish to get internet, because they've got good distributed internet access, high-speed internet access, fiber optic in that area. So she's like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that there was that many. We then went into the tool, the brand new edition that literally is going live today. And I kind of let her sneak into it. She got to see the demo version, the pre-release version. My colleague sitting over here in the room, his office has actually been testing it for me to make sure it's working correctly. This new edition allows them to build a region by a combination of counties and cities. So she was able to say, what is the real coverage of my chamber? And how does that compare to the 4-county total that you just showed me? And what she discovered was that there's only 3,369 employer businesses versus 9,700 in the little piece of the areas that she actually covers. And in just that, because of that subset, the largest employer is actually not retail trade, it's healthcare. So she was seeing a very different look at her 4-county area when she was only covering those couple of towns on the northern part of Essex County and the southern part of Washington County. She didn't know about the rest of the businesses were there. So they've actually now expanded their outreach into the rest of those 4-county areas. They are actually now working with other chambers of commerce in the neighboring communities to say, hey, do you really cover all of the neighboring counties, or do you want my chamber to now include some of the areas that are actually in your county? So they're working more closely together to spur economic growth, business development in that part of New York State, because they have the information that they need to make those sort of informed decisions. Okay? It's I love this story. I've got dozens more of these of other non-traditional users of Census Bureau data, including Census Business Builder. I've been working with a number of people that are doing grant applications to address food deserts in their part of their state. And they said, I need to understand where are the geographies that have no grocery stores, but then I need to look at the demographics of those geographies to say, are they populated? Do people live there who are a vulnerable population, where not having a grocery store is bad? Okay? Low income, high disability status, high percentage population over 65, sort of a vulnerable population. She had been working on this grant application, this one woman I talked to from Ohio, for 3 weeks. In 20 minutes, I showed her how to access all the data for the zip codes in Ohio that she cared about, and she included our report. She was actually able to bookmark all of our report and put it in her grant application, and I'm happy to report she got the grant, so they're actually they got funding to put in grocery stores in those areas of Ohio that currently have none. So these are great stories. I'm sure a lot of you in the room, probably a lot of you on the phone, have similar interesting user stories of how people are using Commerce Department data to do really interesting, impactful things for their communities. So to close me out today, I want to talk a little tiny bit about the future. At the very beginning of my presentation, I talked about that we have dozens of tools on census.gov that users can use to get to our data. Census Business Builder is one of them. I am guilty of adding another tool to that list of tools. But what we're trying to do is to simplify all of that by having sort of a one-stop shop. Imagine a Google at the Census Bureau, a one place that you can go to get access to every one of the data products that we have at the Census Bureau. And that is right now a tool called data.census.gov. I've actually included the URL here on the slide. It is available today as a beta. You can go in there and actually play with this, go in and check it out. I would really, really, really encourage you all to do that. It's a great tool, and it is designed to meet the needs of all 3 of those types of users that we talked about today. The real entry-level user who says, I want to know what the population of Fairfax City, Virginia is, tell me it, let me leave. It meets their needs using a very simple search engine that allows them to type in population Fairfax, Virginia, Fairfax City, Virginia, and it brings back the answer immediately. It's great. It also meets the needs of those data nerds, the power users. Lets them really go in and access huge quantities of data, and most importantly, to me, it meets the needs of those mid-level users, the people that have the needs like the power users have, but not the knowledge and the experience that the power users have to access that data. So that's really my spiel today. Thank you all so much. What I would like to do now is take some questions, see if anybody has any questions, either on the phone or here in the room. If you are shy and don't want to ask your question, I have my email address and phone number. I'm obviously not shy, so you can please give me a call. I have some business cards too. And so let's see, does anybody in the room have any questions or on the phone have any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, can you tell me, so in your first scenario where you mentioned about a company that was wanting to establish a presence in a location, does Business Builder deal with, let's say, issues of permits? You mentioned permits a little bit. Environmental permits. One of the things is if you're attracting foreign businesses into the United States, and they want to look at environmental permits,
right,
what the county or city ordinances may be on that. Does this deal with that? And if it's so, doesn't those things change an awful lot? So how do you keep it current?
Okay, so very short answer first is no, it does not include all that. And it is exactly for the second reason that you just gave why we don't, because they constantly change. However, what I will say is when we added that feature to upload your own reference layers and your own data, we've now facilitated that ability to do exactly that. Let me give you a real-life example. When we first launched Census Business Builder, the gentleman who runs the North Carolina State Data Center is someone I've known for almost all 30 years that I've worked at Census, Bob Coates. He's a great person. It's an amazing resource that he provides for his state in terms of data. And right from the very beginning, he said, Andy, could you please design a tool that would allow me to overlay my data on zoning on top of your map? I want to be able to understand where are good places to open businesses based upon the zoning. If I find a geography that looks really good, but it's not zoned for that, I want to be able to tell a data user, a potential entrepreneur, to say, no, you can't open your restaurant there, it's not zoned for that. But he also cared about it because he wanted to be able to look at the zoning and change the zoning to match where the business opportunities are. He said, if this area is not zoned correctly, we ought to change that. The ability to now upload his own layer of zoning data for every single census tract in the state of North Carolina is built into this tool. He can now do that. So all those other data sources that you were just talking about, the permitting kinds of information, other kinds of data like that, a lot of that information is available electronically, and if it is, users could use this tool and bring that data in. The key point I guess I'm trying to make is Census has got a great wealth of data, but we don't cover everything. So there's a lot of data that local communities have that would be very impactful to help businesses. We need to create tools that make it easier for them to bring their own information, their own data into our tools. So yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. Yeah.
WebEx. Regarding consumer expenditure data, I see a value on a map of $41.87 per household, but it's not clear what the time period is, per month, per year.
So with only a couple of exceptions, all of the data that's in Census Business Builder is annual data. So those are annual totals of how much do people spend on dining out for breakfast, et cetera, et cetera. It's an annual data. There's a little bit of data in there that is quarterly. It is clearly marked as such. So it says quarterly workforce indicators data. And what I'll say is as you get in there and play with the data, you'll see that in some respects, to keep the interface simple, we've hidden some of that nerdy kind of stuff from the users. But if you place your cursor over a data variable, over a geography, over a category, we have tooltips sprinkled throughout Census Business Builder that include that kind of information of whether the period is 1 year or 1 month or 1 quarter. But yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for bringing that up. So, anybody else? Yeah.
Thank you. My question is a little bit more about the tech infrastructure that powers this tool.
Right.
What programs are you all using to do the Census Business Builder?
So there's essentially 3 components to CBB. The application itself was actually built for us by Esri using their ArcGIS platform. So it is on their basic platform. That platform is hosted out on Amazon Web Services on the cloud. That platform then calls in 2 other sources of information. First, it dynamically brings in the geography that's all coming in using shapefiles that we also have hosted out on the cloud, okay? And then the last piece is the data. The tool takes the geography, it grabs the data, it mashes it together into the application. All of the data that's in CBB is coming in also via APIs using the cloud. So we have data that's coming in from the Census Bureau's own API, but we also are pulling that consumer expenditures data in using Esri's API, their consumer expenditures data coming in from their API, and I hope there's no one on the phone from the USDA that's going to have a fit when they hear me say this, but we attempted to consume the ag data from USDA's API and discovered that for efficiency's sake, it was actually easier for us to host the data ourselves. So we downloaded their data, and it's also hosted in an API on the cloud. So the application dynamically is pulling this all together. Doing that freed us up of having to manage the data. There is no data in CBB. Everything is metadata driven, and it's all pulling in on the fly. It kept the footprint of the tool tiny, and it also made it a lot easier for us to mobile optimize. This tool will work on your desktop and on your phone. I have a colleague of mine that is my primary application tester on the phone. I find using Census Business Builder on mobile device to be unbelievably annoying. I am such an old fogey when it comes to using data on mobile devices, but we know entrepreneurs live on their phones, so it will work on your iPhone. There are some functionality things that don't work on the iPhone just because of the platform, but for the most part, those are the major components. Did that answer your question? Okay, good.
Another question on the web. In regards to the USDA data, can you determine rural communities?
So the data we pulled in from USDA is national, state, and county level data. There is not per se an identifier in that USDA data set that says this is a rural county. That identifier is in our other sources. So you could use the other data to sort of understand whether or not that community would be considered rural or not. You could look at things like total population or income or some of the other characteristics of what defines a rural community, but that's not explicitly called out. We have had some requests for people to say, can you provide that urban-rural breakout for individual smaller geographies? We do have it. It's beginning to get into a realm of CBB where it's not a simple tool anymore, and I'm really, really, really resisting letting this thing become American FactFinder because people love it because it's simple. This is not brain surgery. We should not be making it so hard for people to get to our data. But yeah, that's a great question. Yeah.
Just another question. You mentioned a simple one on population. How about trends? Can we look at a certain county and take a look at housing starts, for example? Does that just give you what the housing start is of this year, or is there a trend that says housing starts for the past 5 years have gone down, or population has gone down for the past 5, 10 years, right, or income level has gone down or up, those trending areas?
Yep.
And does it do it by specific industries as well? You mentioned about the bars, but if we were looking at a manufacturing or anything like that,
yep,
are we looking at trends?
Yeah. So the short answer, yes, it does. On the screen, you're seeing the screen showing county and zip code level data. On the upper left-hand corner of the screen, this white box here at the bottom of the thing is what we call the data dashboard. In that data dashboard, we have the value for the variable you've clicked on. So that is what we're looking at is a particular statistic for Fairfax County. But just to the right of that variable is a 5-year time series to say, is that number going up, down, or steady? You can see it kind of went down, and now it's kind of rebounded. And we have a geographic comparison. So how does Fairfax County compare to the state of Virginia and compare to the nation in terms of that statistic? Because sometimes when you're doing those comparisons, saying, oh, okay, this county is a lot higher than the state average, so maybe I ought to think about another county, or maybe that's a great thing. Maybe that's, so yes, we do have that kind of comparison data in there. We have had some questions about whether or not 5 years is enough. I'm trying to be nerdy here and keeping it simple, so we've done 5 years, but if you have any thoughts about whether a 5-year time frame is enough or should we go to 10, it does make the dashboard grow quite a bit in size, and it's already pretty big. You can minimize it, but it still is pretty big. So over here to the right, the 4 additional characteristics are 4 more data variables for the geography you've clicked on. So the map is only ever displaying a single variable, but people wanted to be able to see other things too, in addition to just that one variable. These are all fully customizable, so I can choose what are the 4 additional variables I want to see at any given time. Yeah, great catch. In the interest of keeping this quick, I was trying to not show you everything about the tool, but you got to go in there and play. I guess that's the easiest way for me to say it. So,
any other questions in the room? Okay, we have one more on the WebEx. In regards to healthcare, like dentists, how descriptive can you get?
So the industry breakouts that we have in the Small Business Edition are grouped into these 6 broad categories, and within each of these 6 categories are 9 more detailed categories. We have tried to include the most popular types of businesses. So dentists is one of those industries that we have included in here, but there are 2,600 or so NAICS codes that we publish data for at the Census Bureau, showing 2,600 buttons. That would get old really fast, so we said, no, we're not going to do that. So this search box over here below the NAICS buttons lets you go in and choose any industry that we publish detailed data for. I don't know that an aircraft manufacturer would ever want to use this application to decide their investment of their plant, but they could. They could type in the word aircraft into the search box over here, and it would give them a list. It would give them data on, well, it would give them a list of every industry related to the word aircraft, and they could then choose that industry and then explore the data in the tool for that industry. When we started expanding the scope of Census Business Builder to include not just small businesses, but other businesses, people said, stop adding buttons, just give me a search, which is what we did. So for example, I had some feedback from New Mexico and Arizona for small jewelry manufacturers. I'm not going to add to retail or to manufacturing a category for jewelry manufacturing, but you could type in the word jewelry and get data for that industry. So yeah, great question.
In the room? Okay, one last question on the WebEx, then we're going to wrap things up, and you can email Andy if you need to know more. Are there any training any training manuals for how to use the tool?
So yes and no. On the Census Business Builder homepage, so if you go to census.gov and just type in the search box Census Business Builder, or even just Google Census Business Builder, you will come to a page. I think I have it here. Do I have it here? No, I didn't put it in. You'll come to a page that has the links to the 2 editions of Census Business Builder, and on that page are flyers that describe every feature of Census Business Builder. So for example, if you go in there and you start using the tool and you say, I don't know how to use this filter thing, there's a filter feature that lets me limit the geographies to certain criteria. There's a flyer just about that tool. We've tried to keep this application so simple that we tried it where it should be intuitive enough to not need instruction manuals, not need Andy to come out and train you how to use this thing. But we know as we've added more and more features, it definitely has gotten more complicated. So that's why we have those. We used to have videos, but updating a video every 3 to 6 months when you keep changing the application got really old and got really expensive. So we said, forget about the videos. We're just going to do PDF flyers. There's also overview flyers. So if you are going to a conference and you want to print off a 1-page sheet about Census Business Builder, those are there as well. So, anyone?
Thank you, everybody, for attending. Please fill out your survey.
Thank you.